midst of a huge transformation where peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I am the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I am super excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, Noah Werder. He is the head of people at Guusto. Noah, thank you so much for being here. If you want to share a little bit about yourself for our listeners, including your pronouns, and when you were younger, do you remember how exactly you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for having me. Really excited to be here and to kind of talk to your audience and hopefully share a little bit of wisdom. But yeah, my name's Noah Werder. My pronouns are he, him, his. And a little bit about myself. I'm the head of people, as you mentioned, and I come from a little bit more of an untraditional HR background. I have a degree in education, so I was a teacher before I ever came into the HR world. And I've tried to start my own restaurant, and I've started a tech company, and so kind of entrepreneur in a couple of different industries, but I've always enjoyed the people aspect of things. And so that's how I kind of fell into HR and people in tech. And then sort of been doing that for the past, 6, 7, 8 years in different industries, and then either as a, first time head of people, team of 1 to team of 4, team of 5, and have scaled companies in Canada, US, and Brazil as well. So, kind of a little bit of that sort of Western Hemisphere type of experience. What did I want to be when I grew up as a kid? Honestly, I don't really remember. I don't remember. At one point, I did want to be a teacher, so I kind of checked that box a bit. At one point, I wanted to be a nurse. And those are the only two that I can really remember. And there's kind of the theme of like working with people was always there.
Yeah, hindsight is always 2020, the common theme of working with people. And I'm sure you're working with a lot of different people on a day-to-day currently at Guusto. And I have a lot of questions about kind of what you are most excited about and all of your kind of experiences that you just shared as well. But to kick things off at the beginning, as head of people on the people human resources team, what are you thinking about in terms of company culture, ways to measure it, both qualitatively and quantitatively, knowing that company culture is something that is super dynamic?
Yeah, for sure. And so, there's always the classic answer to how you measure culture, which is like pulse surveys, performance reviews, collecting that general pulse on the employee base and seeing how they're doing and how they're happy. But what we started doing, we're a recognition and rewards company when we provide that software for our clients and that sort of consulting and best practices. And so one way that we've started measuring our culture internally is also just participation rates in our recognition program, seeing who are the top givers of recognition, who are the top receivers of recognition, who are the managers that are doing the best. Are we ensuring that everyone in the team is kind of getting equal, equitable recognition across departments, and really educating and working with our managers to ensure that. We've also started measuring participation and collecting feedback on our culture initiatives. So things like team building. So we use a platform called Wavy, and it helps us run all of our events from third-party providers to the things that we're building internally. And it gathers data on who's attending, from which teams are they attending, and then it gathers data on feelings of connectivity and community after the events. And so after these events, our employees can fill out like a small survey within the Wavy platform that just, I think it's like 3 questions of just like, did you enjoy the event? Would you like to see more of these events? And do you feel more connected to your team because of these events? And so we can kind of see trends of like which events are doing really well, which ones aren't, and seeing if, the things we're doing are actually building our culture and connecting people and building that community internally, which is really, really important to us, and can cater to what our teams want and need. I think as like an HR tech company, we're kind of selling culture to our clients. Yeah. And so we really have to be really specific about what we're doing and making sure that we're collecting the data behind it. I think that's the biggest thing. And so we've heavily invested in that this year of like what our HR tech stack is going to be and how we're collecting this data and bringing in new tools and all that kind of good stuff. So Lattice, Diversio, Wavy, ArchIS, all these different types of tools that we're bringing in to collect the data around that stuff. And then also I still do, I guess you could call them stay interviews or just check-ins on a quarterly basis with every single person on our team, and kind of like, I'm not going to meet with everyone quarterly, but I meet with everyone at least twice a year and kind of just sit down with them and chat with them and say, how are you doing? what's working well? Are you using this perk? We're seeing like underutilization of our L&D program. Are you using it? Why aren't you using it? Are you any blockers? How could we make it better? So things like that.
Absolutely. Walking the walk, talking the talk, and really asking how people are feeling throughout the year as well, whether it's your HR tech stack and also on a one-on-one basis. I think it's really important to understand how people feel like they belong in an organization. Do they feel like they are doing their best work? And it's all about the people. Noah, what's the next problem or situation you're currently trying to solve amongst the many? What would you say is a top one?
So our biggest priority right now is restructuring and rebuilding our career pathways and competency frameworks,
Okay.
and tying all that to transparent salary bands. And so over this quarter and last quarter, myself and a couple members of my team have just really been focusing on how can we build this? What does this look like? How can we create really transparent and easily navigatable career pathways for everyone in the organization? I mean, this is feedback that we've been given basically since the day I started at Guusto, which is, how do I grow here? What should I be doing to get to that next step in my career? And so building out competencies that work for us, and then ones that are a little bit more general that we're kind of getting from talking to other HR leaders around like what are engineering competencies that we should be focusing on, but what are ones that are tied to our values? What does a DEI competency look like in our organization at a junior level versus an executive level? So things like that, and making sure that everyone in on our teams understands what that pathway looks like and how to move to the next step. And then doing a lot of leadership training for our executive and managers to have those conversations, because that's the bigger part of, like, you can have the best framework in the world, but if your managers don't know how to work it with their team members, nothing's going to work.
Absolutely. Having a common framework, really defining kind of what that framework looks like, and then getting feedback on kind of, people going through those pathways as well. There's a ton of research that shares when you are invested, whether it's a manager in the organization, leadership more generally in someone's career, they're more likely to do better work and also stay at the organization as well. So I think that's a good example of just adjusting to kind of feedback and also providing kind of that framework for people to grow in their role too. In terms of people growing in their role, you're also hiring a lot of folks too. Can you tell me about how you intentionally grew the team from 10 employees to 50 plus? Oftentimes, especially startups and high growth organizations talk about hiring like gangbusters. So specifically around the intentionality piece is what I'm curious about too.
Yeah, I think like a lot of startups fall into a trap of not hiring a people person early enough. They hire after they hit that 50 or 100 or sometimes even 200 person mark, where some like it comes to the point where basically the house is falling down and they're like, oh, we need to bring somebody in to prop it back up. And so I think like bringing someone in to lead that function in the first couple of years of an organization is so powerful. You should be treating it like your product. You should have someone leading your product in the first 10 employees. You should have somebody leading your people function within that first 10 employees or 20 employees. So you can be really, like you said, intentional. And the way that we've kind of baked that intentionality into our hiring processes is really looking at the business needs of like, what is our most critical business need now? Who do we need to hire for that? And how do we get ahead of that? And so this year we put a lot of focus and a lot of work at the executive level of building out that roadmap like a year ahead of time. I'm just saying, okay, if we're hitting our revenue goals, if we're hitting all these objectives, at what roles do we need and which ones are the highest priority? And that's at a company level, not a team level, because every team thinks that their hire is the most high priority. And so we had every executive sort of sit down and say, okay, like, marketing needs this person at this point and engineering needs these people at this point. And which ones are going to have the highest impact in the organization, which ones are going to take the longest to hire, and which ones are going to be the most expensive, because different roles cost different amounts of money, and which ones are we going to have to get recruiters to help us hire for. So that's sort of how we were trying to be as intentional as possible. Early days when we just started, there wasn't that level of intentionality for sure. It was a lot of just like, as roles came up, we hired for them. But this year we are definitely being a lot more intentional. And that was partially because my team we need to execute on all of our projects, and we can't execute on projects when we have no roadmap for our headcount, and we keep getting these roles thrown at us. So that was the biggest thing for us. Is like, let's look at our revenue. What key points do we need to hire people? What are those roles? Which ones are the highest priority? Great. Now we understand what those are. And then actually like pre-building all of that in the first couple of quarters, so that when it comes to hire, we don't even have to bother the hiring manager. We just send them the job posting and the outline and say, is this still what you need? Great. We're opening up the role. And it just makes the process a lot easier and a lot smoother.
Absolutely. Looking at the big picture and really being strategic about how you are growing the team too. And the other piece that you said around kind of hiring a people person or people team, not being kind of reactive when the house is falling down, but really thinking strategically, being proactive. Talent people are really important to the business, to the product service, and also to the company culture overall too. And something else that a lot of folks have been talking about and that you don't want to be too reactive on is this concept of burnout, not only talking about you feeling, really burned out with your job, but all the other roles that people have in their lives outside of work too. When we think about burnout, what tools are you providing specifically for managers to really address burnout on their teams or specific departments?
Yeah, so we've done a few things, and like you said, burnout and mental wellness is kind of the hot topic ever since the pandemic started. But what we've done is like we've implemented mental wellness benefits. So we're partnering with Inkblot Therapy to ensure that we have a really comprehensive EAP program for our employees to access mental health benefits, especially if they don't already have a counselor, and trying to remove that bar as much as possible of like, go here, fill out a form, and they will partner you with somebody who can help you. And that was a big thing for us, is like, it's the hardest part is reaching out and getting that help. And so making that first step as easy as possible. We also have a wellness spending account for every one of our employees. So if they already have a counselor that they're working for that isn't part of the Inkblot sort of network, they can use those funds to help pay for their counselors. And then we also have, I think up to $500 in our insurance benefits as well to help pay for counselors and psychologists and that kind of stuff. So between the three sort of just pure benefits, we can cover, anywhere from $750 to $1,250 in just counseling fees and that kind of stuff. We also do bi-weekly, we call them mindful minutes, that are led by members of our team, where, you just pause and get together as a group and do a little bit of yoga, do a little bit of meditation, and just like have that pause. And we've done things around like, we called it the Guusto Thrive. And so in the month of January, we just had everyone track sort of like what helps them be mentally more resilient, whether that's journaling or coloring or going for a walk or meditating, whatever it was for that individual, they could track it. And if they sort of had a certain amount of streaks, then they'd get a Guusto gift card. If they, lasted the whole month, they'd get another Guusto gift card. And then anyone who participated, no matter how many days, was put into a draw for other Guusto gift cards. So just rewarding people for taking care of their mental wellness. And then arming our managers with things like flexible hours, an unlimited PTO policy, so that people can take time off when they have those mental wellness days that they need, when they're just feeling burnt out or not feeling fully there, and allowing people to like work the hours that make the most sense for them. So if they need to start really early and then take their kids to school and then come back for a couple hours and then go pick up their kids and then work a couple hours in the evening, fine, works great. We've got flexible hours, you can do that. And then also ensuring that, if you need a break, you need to go traveling, you can also go do that. You can be flexible and work while travel, and really, really arming our managers with the tools to allow their team members to take time for themselves, to become more resilient, to learn, and then also providing them just other resources. So sharing things in our Slack of like, here's the thing here, and then also talking about it. Having people share their personal stories around their own mental wellness struggles. And like, I've shared that I talk to a counselor on a monthly basis, and that's okay. And it helps me. And our founders will also talk about how important their own mental wellness is. And one of our founders is really intentional about it. He journals every morning, he meditates every day, and he talks about it. And he talks about the tools and the resources that he uses. And he's very upfront about it, like how it saved him and saved his life. And he wouldn't be where he was today if it weren't for these tools. So taking the stigma out of it as well.
Yeah, that modeling behavior is so important, not only to have the tools and resources that you talked about, the flexible hours and unlimited kind of PTO there as well, the gift of time, but sharing that leaders are taking that time, they're taking advantage of these resources and being open about, journaling and really reflecting, having that self-awareness is really critical as well to break the stigma. I know you shared kind of the role that feedback has played and kind of how you're thinking about continuing to intentionally grow the team as the years go on as well. And a lot of times we talk about on this show, company culture, again, super dynamic, consistently auditing our processes as the team grows. Can you tell me about how you redesigned a system to be more equitable over the past 2 years, if it's big or small, a process, policy, or initiative?
Yeah, I'd say like feedback really drives everything that we do at Guusto. So anything that we're trying to build or implement or do, it comes from the feedback of the team. And so like our L&D program that came back from feedback, mainly from our engineering team of just like, it'd be great. Like we had a couple of like subscription services that are a little bit more business focused. So it was great for our sales and marketing and customer success teams. But the engineering team was feeling like we didn't really have anything for them. And so we implemented the budget across the company, but it was based off the feedback from the engineering team. And I've gotten positive feedback on that. Same with the PTO. Originally, we had a PTO policy that was a little bit more traditional, like it had specific weeks of, vacation, specific weeks of sick leave, and then kind of just like hearing a few people who were just like, and not necessarily like structured feedback, like it didn't come from a pulse survey, but just listening to managers talk about, trying to help their team members strategize how best to use those weeks off. We were like, you know what, why don't we just open the door?
Yeah.
And I'll admit, like, historically, I have been a big proponent against unlimited PTO because I think it's a way that some companies make sure that people don't take time off because they make it ambiguous. They make it really hard for people to take off. So what we did to sort of combat that is we set a minimum that everyone in the organization has to take at minimum 2 weeks of vacation, not time off, vacation time. And then at the end of every quarter, my team and I audit vacation across the organization and then send a list to managers saying, here's the members of your team that haven't taken vacation this quarter and they haven't planned any vacation for this upcoming quarter. You need to have a conversation with them so that they're taking some time off. And then also we have a vacation calendar that is transparent across the whole organization. So everyone can see when everyone else is taking vacation. Just again, to be like, people are using it. They're away. I'm off for the first week of May to like hang out with my family and do some chores around that house. And both of the founders were just off in Costa Rica for 2 weeks and we're completely unplugged for that time and just showing people that it's, yes, you can take this time. It's here for you to utilize and that kind of, and all of those things. So getting that feedback, and it's the same thing with our mental wellness benefits. Like we got that feedback that people are like, we want more support for our own mental health. And we're like, okay, great. Let's figure out what that looks like here at Guusto. And same with the flexible hours. Like we have people that have families, we have people that are have elderly parents who they're starting to have to care for. We've got people that are like, they're just graduated university. And so they're, taking more courses on the side because they want to keep learning. And so providing them that flexibility to kind of do all of those things. All of that has come from feedback, either directly through pulse surveys or through manager one-on-ones or from these one-on-one conversations I'm having. So really just like, we're trying to be very intentional with everything that we do here at Guusto.
Absolutely. I think that feedback is so critical. It can come in all forms and in different kind of aspects of conversations as well. And I like that not only do you have kind of that unlimited PTO, but you have the transparent calendar, you have leaders taking time off, and you also do that audit. I think that's taking it a step further as well and really living to the values of really taking time to really fulfill the other kind of different parts of your life too, and really thinking about that from a holistic perspective, not just checking the box to say we offer this, but digging in a little bit deeper. Now, in your experience, what is really important to ensure all employees, no matter where they sit in the organization, what department, if it's day 1, day 90, year 5, feel like they are part of the Guusto culture?
Yeah, I think the biggest part is just talking to them. like sitting down and making time and space for everyone in the organization as an executive, and making sure that they feel welcomed, that they're actually being welcomed by not just like someone on their team, but someone from the executive team, their department head, their manager, that they're getting messages from people across the organization saying, welcome to the team. We're really excited that you're here. And here are the reasons why, and not just like, that, the typical like, hey, it's so-and-so's first day, and like sort of the water cooler channel in Slack, and everyone's like, welcome. And that's it.
Welcome.
Yeah. But like being intentional about it, setting those meetings up and having those conversations with them. And then asking them for feedback, like doing those check-ins with them as they ramp up, and just say, hey, how's it going? How are you feeling? Are you feeling good about your role here? And making sure that they have clarity on their own career progression, making sure that their manager is actually advocating for them, and including them in the conversations, and including them in the, like, showing them that they have leverage here, that they have a say in how this company is growing and how the culture is being formed. I think as soon as you betray that trust, then you're not going to get it back, or it's really hard to get it back. And so ensuring that, there's that feedback loop, that you're, coming back on things, that you're closing the loop on different feedback initiatives. And then when people speak up, when they give feedback that's hard, or when they bring up things that are like, this is especially for marginalized communities, where they're like, this doesn't sit well with me, instead of penalizing them or brushing them off, just being like, great, I hear you, I really appreciate you giving me this feedback, I'm going to go off and do something about it. And then doing something about it and closing that loop with them. I think that's so important, is like, when someone does take the chance, is really celebrate that chance, and make sure that they feel heard, and then make sure that you do something about it. Because I think so often we get so busy as HR leaders, and we're generally under-resourced and overworked, and there's a million things that need to get done at all times, that sometimes those really important pieces of feedback that come through untraditional channels get lost. And I think that's one of the worst things we can do as an HR leader, is lose that feedback and not follow up on it, because it's the most important feedback, when someone takes that chance, and says, hey, I'm from this community and this isn't sitting well with me, and being like, okay, I really appreciate that, because I will admit, as a cisgendered white male, I'm not going to be able to see it that way because of my privilege and the way I grew up and the way that I stand in society. And so I really appreciate it when people give me that feedback, so that we can course correct.
Having those hard conversations is a huge opportunity to really continue to cultivate that trust, but it's also a chance where it's broken for a long period of time or forever, and it takes a while for it to be built back up as well. And really having that kind of active listening approach, following up, is really important, and having those conversations, acknowledging that as well. I know a lot of the feedback that especially historically marginalized communities have given to employers, whether it's in articles, Glassdoor, whether it's internally at an organization, is really asking kind of how they're showing up for them at the workplace, whatever that looks like for them. How is Guusto really not perpetuating trauma that might happen externally in the world, internally at the organization, which at the end of the day is a microcosm of our society, of our community.
Yeah. And so, like, I hope we're doing this okay. It's sort of the truthful answer. And so, like, we talk about what's happening globally in our conversations. We bring them up in our all hands meetings. And I think the things about these traumatic events is that they do bring things up for people, and we let them know that they can take time away to sort of settle and feel their feelings, and they don't have to show up to work on those days.
Yeah.
Like, this was a terrible thing that happened in this community. If you identify as a member of this community, it's okay not to be here. You can leave, and that's fine. Your manager will understand. We as an organization understand. You don't have to be here right now. And so we really talk about that. We reinforce the benefits and the supports that are available for people. Like, this thing is happening. If this is triggering some things for you, remember that you have Inkblot available to you. Remember that you have these health spending account, wellness spending account, and these resources through your insurance benefits to help you pay for these things if it's a burden for you financially. And then also, reinforcing managers to reinforce that message as well in one-on-ones, and not have managers be like, how are you handling this traumatic event in society? But saying, hey, as an organization, we see that this is happening in society. If you need some time, please take that time. And saying that across the organization to every one of their team members, not singling people out, because some people don't want to be singled out. Some people may not feel it as much, but just saying, hey, as a blanket statement as an organization, if you need time to process this, take the time you need to process this. Yeah, and then this is less about reinforcing, but like we also invite speakers to come in and talk about what it means to be Black or Indigenous or a woman or another, underrepresented group or in the workplace, and the history of these communities in Canada and the United States, and just generally try and broaden our understanding and create a community of understanding of why some of these events might trigger some people and why it is important for us to support them and give them space for that. Because again, myself and both founders, we're all, we're cisgender white men, all heterosexual. And so there's not a lot that will set us off in regards to what's happening in society. And so we're trying to learn more, and we're trying to educate the whole organization so people are understanding of other people's needs. And because we're all different, we all have different needs, and we all have different things that, do trigger us and require us to take some time. Because from a business perspective, even just as a business perspective, it is like there is no business case to forcing somebody to be in work when they're not going to work, when they're dealing with a traumatic event in their life, when they're feeling really strong feelings. They're not going to get anything done. They're going to feel resentful. They're going to get burnt out. And it can become really toxic, because then they just want nothing to do with the organization. And so if you can provide them a couple days to a week of just like take some time off and be with your family and be with your friends and talk to your support network, they'll come back refreshed. They'll come back ready to execute, and they'll come back a little bit more trusting of your organization, that you actually have their best interests in mind.
Absolutely. Creating that space is so important. Equipping people with the tools to have these conversations as well, saying, I see you, understand, and I'm trying to understand, and giving you the space to process this. It's really, really important. Now, I feel like our time flew by. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you want to share with folks who are listening, or, underscoring 1 to 2 key takeaways about anything that we discussed as well, from employee feedback to really listening, following up?
Yeah, I think and I didn't really touch on it in the conversation, but I think like with the feedback, and what comes with that in hand in hand is the transparency. And so being very transparent about the feedback that you're getting and the action items that coming out of it and the projects that you're doing with that feedback, closing the loop on that is super, super important. And it's actually part of our turning point as an organization at Guusto. Is like, founders got a 1-star review on Glassdoor, and we're like, okay, like there was a bit of a wake up call for them. And they changed. We're like, all right, we can't do what we've been doing. We need to do something better. And so like they started recognizing employees a lot more consistently. They started using the product more internally. They started giving feedback more. They started asking for feedback more. And so, I'll say to all founders, all executives, all people professionals, the best thing you can do is get feedback and actually change. Don't be defensive. Listen to it. We all have our egos, but the best thing you can do is put your ego aside and really listen with the intention of growing. Because if you're not growing, then you're stagnating.
Absolutely. Have that growth mindset, forever learner. And someone was talking about this as well in terms of feedback, even especially when it's hard, of seeking to understand before being understood, and being defensive around it too, because it's just better for everyone. Noah, thank you so much for taking the time to be on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon.
Thanks so much for having me, Christina. It's great to be here.
Of course, and as a reminder for folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we really believe in the importance of employers and employees to really be seen, heard, and understood, and know it's a requirement for the business to succeed overall. Have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone.